I am so excited to have the chance to introduce a dynamic speaker and author tonight. In preparation for the program, I made a point to read Hamza's current book and watch his videos online, and I encourage everybody to do that. I really appreciated his perspective regarding modern leadership. His book is full of valuable insights for every level of leadership. The work regarding the need for leaders to change before change is thrust upon us was a sentiment I am sure many of us can relate to after the last couple of years. Page after page, I was eating up the content, and I am eager to know more. So please join me in welcoming Hamza Khan to the stage.
Thank you. Racine County Economic Development Corporation, hello, good afternoon, and welcome. This is Human 9000, navigating the future of work with attunement, resilience, and creativity. As you just heard, my name is Hamza Khan. I'm a speaker, author, and educator, and I'm absolutely thrilled to serve as your keynote speaker for this, 39th annual event. Congratulations, 39 years. That is incredible. From AT&T to Johnson & Johnson, from PepsiCo all the way to TikTok, I'm trusted by organizations the world over to help their people thrive. Not just survive, but thrive in the future of work. And I'm hoping to do just that with everyone here today, in person and tuning in online. The finance community, small business owners, elected officials, business leaders, and government leaders. Now, this is a talk about the future of work. And I understand that can be an ambiguous and perhaps even nebulous term. So I thought it would be wise to align on a definition. What do we mean when we're talking about the future of work? Clockwise, we're considering three big questions. Number one, who does the work? Number two, when and where is the work done? And number three, how is the work done? And I suppose during the pandemic, some people have been increasingly asking a fourth question. Why is the work done? But that's a philosophical debate that we'll save for the networking. All of these are massive questions with no easy answers, save for perhaps the answer to this question. Does this shit stress you out? Right? And let's be fair, there's a lot to be stressed about. AI, robotics, the great resignation, that's what they're calling it, an uncertain economy, fluctuating employment rates. I'm curious to know, does this stress you out, ma'am? Can I get your name, please? Tammy, let's be honest. Does it stress you out? Very much so. Okay, what? You want me probing a little deeper over here. What exactly stresses you out? Absolutely, you and I both. Sir, what about yourself? Does it stress you out? And your administrator as well. Oh my goodness. And it doesn't have to be the bad kind of stress. It doesn't have to be distress. You know, the type of stress that causes fear and even suffering. I think it could also be the good stress, EUSTRESS, a measure of how engaged you are with the things that give you joy, bring purpose, or perhaps precursor to getting to where we want to go. So Tammy and the team of administrators and anybody else who might be experiencing fear and stress right now, let's face these head on. So for the last 2 years, at least, you've been dealing or searching rather for some sense, honestly, any sense of old world stability, certainty, simplicity, and clarity. But unfortunately, you've come up short. And the world for which you've been optimized no longer exists. And you find yourselves not in a new normal, as they're calling it, but a new abnormal, one in which the concept of business as usual has disappeared. And this is true for everyone, really myself included. On March 11th of 2020, when the world shut down, when Racine County shut down, everyone in this room and tuning in online were confronted with a solemn truth. That we as business leaders and government leaders were either ready for this new epoch of work or we weren't. And the evidence that the world was changing was glaring. And in some cases, it was telegraphed years in advance. Here's a 2019 World Economic Forum briefing, which showed that disruption is intensifying, the gulf between those embracing change and those falling behind is growing, and we're moving towards a more inclusive society. Again, telegraphed a full year before we plunge into chaos. So the pandemic, if anything, was a catalyst for these changes. And if we don't prepare for these and other forecasted changes today, then they'll likely present themselves as one crisis after another tomorrow. In this way, crisis really has a way of speeding up the inevitable. We're in the middle of what some people are describing as the quickening. Changes that were planned over the next 5 years. So think about your strategic plan. Think about that new piece of software you want to roll out. Think about that new hiring initiative you've got going on that spans 5 years. Boston Consulting Group, BCG, reckons that those changes that were planned over the next 5 now need to be made in the next 2. Wow, we have to change a lot faster than we think. But with all that being said, and even though it seems like the only constant about our world is constant change, I believe sincerely that we're going to be okay. And trust me, I'm a pessimist, sometimes borderline cynic. And I'm telling you, we're going to be just fine. Because deep within the human condition, within each and every single one of you, are the very conditions that we require, the very attributes, that we require to emerge from chaos and to navigate the future of work confidently and successfully time and again. Author Arundhati Roy gave us a beautiful way to conceptualize the transition through chaos that we just experienced. She said that historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, and I love that metaphor. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. So what is this new world that we've stepped into, and how can you succeed here just as you did in the old world? Over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to give you a lot of ideas. And as you've already assessed, I speak very quickly. I can't help it. I get really excited about this stuff. So between a lot of information, a lot of slides, and me speaking very quickly, I apologize if you get lost. And if you're taking notes, may the force be with you. But I will do my very best to patch up any learning outcomes by the end. I'm going to stick around for the networking, and I will hook you up with the slides. But if you get lost at any point, just remember these numbers: 4, 3, and 6. I'm going to give you 4 warnings, 3 values, and 6 actions. And my goal with this talk is very simple. It's to empower each and every single one of you with the actionable insights required to navigate the future of work, to get out of survival mode and to focus on thriving. All right, so some trivia to start things off. This is a very business-minded group, and I trust that almost all of you know what the Fortune 500 list is. By a show of hands, does anyone not know what it is? If you're feeling too shy, I'll just quickly define for you a list of the largest corporations by revenue for their respective fiscal years. Think about which were the top 10 global Fortune 500 companies in the year 2021, so last year. Let's take some guesses. Sir, I think you've got a good guess. I believe in you. Alphabet, which is the parent corporation of Google. Very good, sir. Amazon, very good. How about over here in the front row, the award winners and the presenters? Any guesses? Apple, very good, fantastic. Can we hear from over here? I feel like I'm at an auction for some reason. How about over here, the front row over here? Any guesses? Microsoft, let's think beyond tech. Let's go to traditional manufacturing, perhaps fashion, food, energy. Some guesses over here, ma'am? I believe in you. You got a good one in you. Think about a household name. General, ooh, very good guess. Very, very good guess. Okay, give yourself a pat on the back if you got any of these right. Many of you were thinking of them. Walmart, State Grid, Amazon, China National Petroleum, all the way down to Toyota Motor and Volkswagen. Now let's rewind the clock back to the year 1995. First of all, I've got a trick question for you. How many global Fortune 500 companies were there in the year 1995? Ma'am? I said it was a trick question. 0? Think about, I'll say it again. How many global Fortune 500 companies were there in the year 1995? 500, there we go. And this is a room full of finance professionals too, eh? I felt really badly about putting this joke in there, but I thought I'd go for it, and thank you for receiving that well. Who were the top 10 back then? Take a look, a different list. Mitsubishi, Mitsui, Itochu, all the way down to Exxon, Nisho EY, and Royal Dutch Shell Company. Now let's rewind the clock even further back, a full industrial revolution to go to the year 1955. Who were the top 10 back then? Oh, a radically different list. General Motors, ExxonMobil, US Steel, General Electric, very good, Esmar, Chrysler, Armour, Gulf Oil, Mobil, and DuPont. Now, how many of the original Fortune 500 companies from 1955 are still on the list today? And your guess was very good, ma'am. What was it? Give me a number. 6, go a little higher, multiply that. Very close. The answers, I feel like this is like the Price is Right, right? You would definitely be called up on stage because the answer is 12. Just 12 companies from the 1955 Fortune list remain on the list today. Now, the very first Fortune list, which was an all-American list, came out in the year 1917. But before that, one quick stat to consider, which means that based on what I just said, in the last 66 years, 88% of Fortune 500 companies went bankrupt, got acquired, got broken up, and dissolved in one way or another. They ceased to exist in their original forms. Now, the very first list came out in the year 1917. How many companies from way back then are still on the list right now? So 12 from 1955, the number has to be lower. How many companies from way back then are on the list right now? Sir, I got a good nod from you. What? And your name? Glenn. What a guess. The answer is 1. And I will tell you who, but more importantly, why, by the end of this talk. And Jeremy, where are you at, Jeremy? Jeremy, he's back there. Okay, so Jeremy, if you want to walk around with a bin and collect cash bets, in case anybody has a good guess as to what that company is, you can go see Jeremy at the back, or he might come around over here. Folks, the harsh truth is this. Most organizations fail. And as a business leader and a business owner, no less, I get zero joy in sharing that with you. And I trust that you get zero joy in hearing that. Sir, may I ask what company you represent today? What organization? Gateway Technical. And do you get any joy in me saying that? No, you want to run up over here and like Randy Orton, give me an RKO off the stage, right? I get it. Many of you right now are thinking to yourself, yeah, but Hamza, I get what you're saying. I've been on board for everything except this part. My organization is different. It's not going to fail. And to that, I'd say fair, but perhaps consider that you're experiencing what's known as optimism bias. It's a cognitive bias that causes someone to believe that they themselves are less likely to experience a negative event. Think of it as our 10,000-year-old defense mechanism against adversity. It's the self-persuasion and unfortunately sometimes self-delusion that bad things only happen to other people. You can rationalize that a coffee shop in your neighborhood shut down. You can rationalize that another rival company shut down. You can rationalize that a company that you read about in a newspaper on the other side of the world shut down. But surely not your company, right? Your company is impervious to this failure. But don't just take my word for it. McKinsey found in a survey of 3,000 executives, just like many of you in the room, that the average enterprise transformation failure rate is a whopping 60%. And Harvard Business Review puts that number up even higher at 70%. So all of this is to say that organizations and leaders specifically tend to drop the ball when it comes to navigating change. In 2002, Fortune published a list of reasons why organizations fail. And to me, this was a missed opportunity to spin it off into a publication called Misfortune. These are the top 3 from their list. At number 3, we have negligence. Organizations fail to model what would happen if a key assumption that growth will continue ad nauseum disappears from the equation. At number 2, we have complacency. People are less likely to make optimal decisions following prolonged periods of success. In other words, leaders get drunk off their own success. And I'm going to tell you a story in just a couple of minutes that will really drive this idea home. But here we are, the number 1 reason why organizations fail. It is avoidance. Leaders are slow to confront the changing world around them. In other words, the rate of change on the inside of the organization fails to keep pace with the rate of change on the outside, in the external environment. And wow, is our world changing. Back when I was in the Canadian Armed Forces, I learned of an acronym, VUCA, VUCA, which sounds cute. It sounds like the 5th Teletubby. But I promise you, far from. It's chaos personified. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And many of you might be familiar with this acronym yourselves. The more volatile the environment, the faster and further conditions change. The more uncertain the environment, the harder it becomes to forecast. The more complex the environment, the harder it becomes to analyze. And the more ambiguous the environment, the harder things become to decipher. One more time, VUCA, our ancient adversaries, if you will. And it helps, for those of you trying to wrap your head around this concept, to think of it as adjacent to the scientific concept of entropy, which explains how if left unchecked, disorder and randomness tend to increase over time. So if a leader is engaged in avoidance, knowingly or unknowingly, they can be assured that their circumstances won't get any better. It's essentially a law of the universe that they'll only get worse. Chaos is hungry for failing organizations, and it thrives when leaders like us are unprepared. Now, fingers crossed, I think the worst of the pandemic is behind us. Many of us might get lulled into some semblance of old world normal, but we still have at most until the year 2045 to reboot the who, when, where, and how of work. Because that is when most futurists concur that the singularity will occur in our lifetime. So arguably, this device in my hand, that device in your pocket, will be more productive and resourceful than all of us here combined. Wow. Are you prepared for that world? Is your organization prepared for that world? Is Racine County prepared for that world? See, every organization, and none are exempt, my company included, face the exact same inflection point. Following introduction, growth, and maturity, they have to make a tough decision. Do they renew themselves and start the cycle again? And if not, the only other option is they tumble into the chasm of time, just like 88% of Fortune 500 companies. Now, evolution requires innovation, it requires renewal, and this seems obvious enough, but then tell me how and why are organizations failing regardless? What sabotages good intentions? Remember how I said I was going to give you 4 warnings? They're undergirded by this idea that keeps me up at night. Active inertia. This is the tendency to follow established patterns of behavior, even in response to dramatic environmental shifts. So stuck in ways of thinking and success that brought, stuck in ways of thinking and working and being that brought success in the past, leaders accelerate all their tried and true activities, but in trying to dig themselves out of a hole, they just deepen it. The 4 hallmarks of active inertia, and it's on everyone here today. To spot this early, look for these hallmarks when they start to manifest in your organizations and address them as soon as possible before they have a chance to bubble up into active inertia. So at number 1, we have blinders. Now, previously, these were strategic frames, the set of assumptions that determine how people view the organization. Gradually, and then suddenly, people become closed off from feedback and they can't see beyond their day-to-day operations. Then at number 2, we have routine. Previously, these were processes, the way things were always done. But gradually, and then suddenly, people become hypnotized by the rhythmic and temporarily predictable conditions of their work. At number 3, we have shackles. Previously, these were relationships, the ties to employees, customers, shareholders, and distributors. Gradually, and then suddenly, people lose their optionality and adaptability because they're tethered to this ecosystem that no longer serves their needs. And then at number 4, we have dogmas. Previously, these were values, the set of shared beliefs that determine organizational culture. Now, you'll agree with me that strategic frames, processes, relationships, and values, all essential components of an otherwise healthy organization. But when they devolve into their stubborn counterparts, when they become blinders, routines, shackles, and dogmas, that's when things become shaky. Combined, they slow down the rate of change on the inside of the organization. And if the rate of change on the inside of the organization is slower than the rate of the outside, you end up with the scenario that Jack Welch so eloquently described. If the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. I'll say that one more time. If the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. So let me tell you a very quick story. Back in my hometown of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, there was a bright-eyed, wet behind the ears, young marketing professional, yours truly. And I just landed a dream job at none other than Sony Music Entertainment. I couldn't believe it, a record label. I was so excited to be there. And I would sit in marketing meetings all day and I would ask a simple question. Oh, by the way, I should say this, claim to fame. This guy, you're looking at him, yours truly, one of my first jobs was to draft a tweet for Beyonce. This is, I swear to God, this really happened. But it was later deleted because of a spelling mistake and they took away my access. And in my humble opinion, my career has gone downhill ever since. Nothing I have done quite lives up to this achievement, but that's neither here nor there. I would sit in marketing meetings and I would ask for marketing strategies. And people would say to me all the time, marketing strategies? Stop asking so many questions on that. Trust your gut. One guy even said to me, I'll never forget, he did this. He pointed with both fingers at himself. Marketing strategies? You're looking at him. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how we do things over here. I'm new, I didn't know any better, but I would hear all the time for several weeks, that's the way it's always been done. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe this is the way things are always done. But I've had a lot of time since that experience. And I can tell you, if there's one thing that I've learned in my career, doing things because that's the way it's always been done is actually a horrible reason to continue doing anything. And trust me, I'm somebody who loves the stability offered by comfort and routines, but I learned the hard way. Doing things because that's the way it's always been done is a horrible reason to continue doing anything. So just as I suspected in 2008, my boss pulls me aside. I think he literally grabbed me by my collar. He's like, come into my office. His name was Simon. And he said, stick around, man. Things are about to change big time. And I said, Simon, what's about to happen? And he's like, this company is about to undergo a revolution. I watched from the inside as not just Sony Music, but the entire record industry around it changed. They were the first casualty of a wave of digital disruption that is affecting many of your organizations right now. So let me give you some insight into what it looked like. A New York Times article in 2008 read, music sales fell in 2008, but climbed on the web. Now, yes, Sony experienced a rise in streaming services, a decline in physical sales, and a global economic crisis simultaneously. But what really did them in was this. Their leaders stopped paying attention. They fell victim to the #1 reason, according to Fortune, why organizations failed. I learned from my time at Sony, which that 3-month contract spanned for 2 years. I was riveted by what was happening. I learned from my time at Sony that the things you choose not to face will face you nonetheless. In the words of author Philip K. Dick, reality is that which, even when you close your eyes, doesn't go away. My dad has an interesting take on this. He said that you can choose to avoid reality, but you can't avoid the consequences of avoiding reality. And the numbers were there all along, and this is the frustrating thing. You can see in 2000, all the way to 2003, physical sales are declining. And in 2004, there's a glimmer of hope, which by all means must have reassured the leaders to not do anything. And then in 2005, the trend resumes. Physical sales decline, digital sales increase, such that by the time I showed up in 2007, evidence that the world had changed was overwhelming. And in the end, the leaders engaged in what I can only describe as a bloodbath. Every week, forget about teams, forget about divisions, entire wings of the company were cleared. People were let go, people were quitting en masse. I've never seen anything like it. By the end of my time there, I was the only person left, this lowly marketing professional on a 2-floor building at Sony Music. And I actually dug up a tweet from back then, which reads, Hamza K is at work feeling like Cillian Murphy from 28 Days Later. Where is everyone? Here's how Sony fell to active inertia. These are composites of actual things said during my time there. In terms of blinders, they would say, customers like physical products, therefore physical sales will continue to rise. Tell me, when was the last time you bought a CD? In terms of routines, they said physical production accounts for a vast majority of our business, but back home where I'm from, I think we have 1 specialty record store in the entire city, which is wild. In terms of shackles, they said we have long-standing relationships with retailers and distributors. We've created an ecosystem, which has now gone entirely virtual. And in terms of dogmas, they said albums are meant to be listened to start to finish. Nobody will buy or stream singles. I mean, they really got that one wrong, man. And I'm saying this as a music aficionado who loves listening to albums start to finish. I think I spend more time listening to singles before I shop around. Anyways, disruption happened. The forces of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, the fifth Teletubby, pressed and pressed and pressed upon this multinational Fortune 500 company until, unfortunately, it was forced to decline. The same way it's pressing upon all of your organizations, the entire Racine County. So in the face of all of this, what can be done? At this point, you're like, yeah, shit, man, Hamza, I get it, man, I'm scared. Help us, give us some solutions here. I got you, don't worry. What is the solution? In the face of constant change, what can be done? As counterintuitive as it might sound, the answer isn't to manage chaos. It's not to fight chaos, it's not to resist it, it's to learn how to dance with it, to become change-friendly, to make change your default mind state, to adopt a change-friendly disposition in everything that you do, to change before change is required. And this is an idea echoed by Alvin Toffler, a futurist, who said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn, as we're all doing here today in the spirit of prosperity for this county. And look, getting ahead of myself, I'm really excited. I know that the last 2 years have been difficult, and I've had many very insightful conversations with all of you in my very short time here in Racine. I know that the last 2 years were difficult. The lockdowns, the ambient lingering stress of the pandemic, big question marks about which companies are going to be here, which companies are going to invest. All the things that you're struggling with, supply chain issues to boot, it's wild. And I understand that you have very little energy left in the tank, some of you. And so I want to stand up here and say, I'm not going to teach you new skills, which sounds like a terrible deal, right? You got this keynote speaker, he's not teaching you new skills. What the hell? I simply want you to act out the ones already in your possession. Like I said, deep within the human condition, within each of you are the very skills that you require to emerge from chaos and navigate the future of work. I want you to operationalize and maximize them. And there's three in particular that I believe comprise the suite of change friendliness that I think is befitting of the direction this county is heading in. And they are attunement, resilience, and creativity. In our remaining 10 minutes together, we're going to take a deep dive into each of them, starting with attunement. And I just want to be clear. This framework isn't about competing with tech. It's not about trying to beat the machines at their game. It's about doing the things that can't be reduced down to simple binary, things that can't be distilled down into ones and zeros. These are uniquely human qualities. So the value number one that we're going to tackle is the value of attunement. As you know, the number one reason why organizations fail is avoidance. So Airbnb, fascinating case study here. Rocked by the pandemic, they had to make some really tough decisions, like all of you did. So Brian Chesky had to let go of, I think, 20% of the staff. But how did he do it? Put on a masterclass. Rather than just sending a mass layoff email or bringing everyone into a hotel room and saying, sorry guys, your severance packages are here, peace. He wrote everyone a heartfelt letter. He ensured they didn't blame themselves for being let go. He explained his decision-making process in excruciating detail. He thanked everyone for their service. He gifted them their tech, and then he took it a step further. He built a platform to showcase their work to future employers so that they can land on their feet sooner. He didn't have to do any of that. That seems really extra, but the reason why he did that is precisely why he's the well-respected and beloved CEO of this travel giant. Because he knows, he's attuned, he's dialed in with the internal and external environments. He knows what people want sometimes before they do. So how do we recreate this level of attunement in our respective organizations? I've got three exercises for you. Number one, reverse engineer your organization. So this is a solo mission. When you're done here today, go and think about what your mission, vision, values, principles, and purpose are for your respective companies. Think about that. And some questions to answer that might prompt the answers are, what is the organization trying to become? What are we? What are we not? What is our culture? What do we reward, tolerate? What do we punish? What do our people believe in? And how do we impact the lives of our end users? And it's important that you don't look at your existing documents, you don't look at your website, you think about this from your perspective. So that's data set number one, put that aside. Then data set number two is a listening tour, or is acquired from a listening tour. Go and talk to everyone who comprises the value chain of your organization. Talk to your fellow leaders, talk to your frontline staff, talk to your distributors, your suppliers, and talk to the end users of the work that you do. And ask them the tough questions. Ask them, what's working? What's not working? What are our strengths? What's going on? You know what's not working right now? The tech. So, sorry, guys. And that's my fault. I'm a little trigger happy here. What's working? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are the opportunities for growth? And what are the threats to our organization? And you have to ask with the intention of learning. Because the number one problem in communication, according to George Bernard Shaw, is the illusion that it has taken place. Whenever I feel that active inertia is setting in my organization, I remember the following adage. That which we most need to find is often where we're least willing to look. And that which we're most needing to find is often where we're least willing to look. It can be found in filth, as they say. So ask the tough questions. Then you have data set number one, your thesis. Data set number two, what people actually think about your organization. Then you bring in your stated mission, vision, values, principles, purpose. And then you compare three data sets and you look for any gaps that exist between these three questions. How you see yourself, how others see you, and how you want to be seen. So I come from a marketing and communications background, and the more closely grouped the answers to these questions are, that's known as brand integrity. And you want tight brand integrity. Think about some of the most successful brands in the world, Disney, Apple, Under Armour, for instance. The answers to all three questions are nearly identical. And that's evidence that you're synchronized with the inside and outside environment. So there we go. Those are the first three actions that comprise attunement. Real quick, are we okay for time? We've got like 5 more minutes. Okay. The end result of attunement is complete situational awareness. Number two, the value of resilience. This is a fascinating one. So a couple of years ago, I ran a project called the Year One Project to try to understand, is there a formula for wild success? and we studied the biographies, we reverse engineered the careers of, I think, 200 different high performers at all levels. I'm talking about like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, all the way to Elon Musk. And we tried to figure out, is there a practice and attribute, something that they do, something that they believe in that guarantees their lasting success? And very quickly what we found, I think across 75% of these different interviews and exercises that we did, resilience. Now they had different names: grit, tenacity, boldness. Sometimes verbatim they would use those words, but the idea was the same: the ability to adapt to and withstand stress. Now all of us have it in this room, but the trick is the only way we can unlock our resilience is through self-awareness. So if you're not already doing these things, I encourage you to get in the habit of practicing gratitude. This is the easiest one for you. Every morning, wake up. If you're a religious person, you already do this. I pray, but sometimes I just write out 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I know this seems really corny, but trust me, it has single-handedly rewired my disposition. Some mornings I don't even know what to be grateful for. I write down, I'm grateful for this pen. I'm grateful for this glass of water, but then I have an extra pep in my step when I leave the door. Journaling, writing, therapy, meditation, community, how beautiful is this? Hopefully after today, many of you who've been isolated don't feel as lonely as you have being amongst peers, and then sharing resources. If anything today has stuck out to you, share this with somebody. This is how we recover and grow together as a community. And check this out, the University of Zurich found that reflecting on how you've overcome past personal challenges can help you to process negative experiences. Actively reminding yourself of how your self-efficacy helps to boost personal resilience. What does this mean? The last 2 years, think of it as a terrible amusement park ride, right? Pandemic land. Nobody wanted to go there, but we all ended up there somehow. We're all in a rush to get out. I get it, but just make sure that on your way out, as you run through the gift shop, grab something. Grab a mantra, grab a saying, grab a ritual, a practice, whatever helped you get through these last 2 years. Take it with you, please, because you're going to need that exact same thing when it comes to navigating the next crisis and the one after that. The end result of resilience is diminished stress impact. Okay, our third and final value is the value of creativity. Where are my finance people at, by the way, by a show of hands? So if you work in banking, if you work in finance, if you work in accounting, a couple of people over here, right? Sam over there with the Argyle sweater. What's your name? Barb. Barb, let me ask you a question. Honestly, are you creative? And you know what? I concur. I think you're as creative as they come. So especially in finance, people have a tendency to think they're not creative. My best buddy, if you went on his Instagram account, you'd be like, what is this? It's the ugliest thing you've ever seen. He does not know how to take a picture if his life depended on it. You would probably report his account just on how atrocious it is visually. But let me tell you, this guy is the most creative person that I know. He's a forensic accountant. Why? It's because we've been conditioned to believe that all artists are creative. That's debatable, but not all creatives are artists, like Barb. Barb, I think you're as creative as they come, especially in light of this definition. Creativity is just connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something and it seemed obvious to them after a while. So in this way, creativity is making connections between seemingly disparate points. So Barb, I gotta ask again, in light of this definition, are you creative? Bingo, I love that. I love that, so good. Barb the creative. The next 2 actions for you are all about imagining hell and imagining heaven. So the next time you launch something, start from the assumption that it failed. Engineer chaos, just imagine it failed. And I know this seems like an unnecessarily negative experience, but I promise you it's very liberating because you'll be able to detect failure long before it happens. So do a pre-mortem, I will say, but take it a step further. Simulate chaos within your organization. Because we all had to simulate chaos in a very real way with the pandemic. Chaos Monkey is an exercise that was pioneered by Netflix. So they imagined what would happen if literal monkeys stormed their data centers and went apeshit. Ripping out cables, flinging excrement, doing whatever monkeys do. And then they study how the team reacts and they patch up shortcomings accordingly. They do this, I think, on a quarterly basis. So think about perhaps doing something similar within your respective organizations. The goal of chaos engineering is to run through failure before it happens so that when it does happen, you'll instinctively know what to do. So now that you've imagined hell, let's imagine heaven. The last 2 years really drained our creativity. It hampered our imagination. And many of us are stuck in survival mode. All we're focused on is our day-to-day, the mission. But what about the aspirational vision? Let's get back to that. After an event like this, after a long weekend, whenever people are relaxed, give them a prompt ahead of time and try to help them imagine what would happen if all resources were available, if all lights were green, if all legislation worked in our favor. And try to imagine the best case scenario. Reinvest your people in where the company, where the organization, where the county could go. The end result of creativity is the ability to envision change, to map out the full spectrum of possibilities before you. If you do this correctly, if you operationalize and maximize ARC, the rate of change on the inside of the organization will exceed the rate of change on the outside. You'll be able to dismiss that graph that I shared with you earlier because you will automatically make the decision to renew well before that decision needs to be made. Whoa. Let's just skip ahead over there, right? This thing really wants to wrap this up. I get it. Okay, fine. I wasn't kidding, by the way. There's a lot of information here, right? 4, 3, and 6. So if you need a reminder, the 4 warnings against active inertia, the 3 values to navigate the future of work, and the 6 ideas to make this happen. Don't worry, I will hook you up with the slides afterwards. So a leader that I think about quite a bit is Jacinda Ardern, of all people, Prime Minister of New Zealand. Interesting character. I think she's as change-friendly as they come. And she was described by The Atlantic as the most effective leader on the planet. And I think I'm inclined to agree in light of everything we've just talked about. How change-friendly is she? Check this out. In the middle of one of her live television interviews, an earthquake goes off. I think like a 5.8 magnitude earthquake. And as you can imagine, the host was stunned. And he asks her in a very cute New Zealand accent, which I'll attempt right now. He says, Prime Minister, you okay? Right? That was terrible. I'm not going to continue with that. Prime Minister, are you okay? And without flinching, without a hint of fear in her eyes, she responds, I'm fine. I'm not under any hanging lights. I look like I'm in a structurally sound place. Wow. And I think about that reaction all the time. It's like a Disney character speaking. I'm in a structurally sound place, an unshakable place, a resilient place. Ardern didn't have to get ready for that earthquake. She was always ready. In the same way that she was always ready for an earthquake, a domestic terrorist attack, 2 volcanic eruptions, and a global pandemic back to back to back to back. She didn't have to get ready for these crises. She was always ready. And that is the key here today. She knows, as you all know, that change isn't coming. It's here, all around us. The future of work isn't later. The future of work is now. And this level of situational awareness offers us a massive competitive advantage. Because as you've learned, most people, most of your peers choose to avoid change. It's human nature. But the things they choose not to face will face them nonetheless. You, on the other hand, Racine County, are as change-friendly as they come. I've learned. You're as change-friendly as they come. You have the wisdom to separate the characters which comprise the ancient word crisis into their disparate parts. 1, a time of danger, one that creates a sense of urgency, but 2, a time of opportunity. To step through the portal opened up by the pandemic and reimagine the county, reimagine the organization that you run for the future. All right, let's wrap this thing up for real. I told you I would tell you which company from the 1917 Fortune list remains on the list today, is in existence today. Jeremy, did we collect the bets? No? We're good? Does anyone want to take a chance? Oh, very close. I think I heard it over there. What was it? Someone said GE. Who said GE? Sir, you said GE. The answer? Absolutely. Congratulations. General Electric. Well done. Well done. Why is General Electric the only company from 1917 still standing on the Fortune 500 list today? It's because one of their leaders, just like you, put an idea into action. One that the company practices to this very day, and one that I hope that all of you will emulate well beyond the new abnormal. It is the idea, Racine County Economic Development Corporation, that you must change before you have to. RCEDC, change before you have to. Thank you.